So I'm from Chesapeake. I've been here about 15 years. I live in the Grassfield area. My business is on Battlefield behind the Home Depot and Lowe's. A lot of our employees live and obviously work here as well. And we've been in our spot for our business for the last 2 years. If you are on social media and you feel so inclined to give me a shout out, my information is right here. So I am Erik Olson on all the platforms. So as Stephen said, marketing is getting more and more complex. We have websites, we have mobile websites, we have SEO, we have social media. There's so many things that can affect your marketing, and every business and organization needs marketing in order to get further ahead in their mission. There's a new aspect to marketing, which is voice marketing, and it is very new to the marketplace, and we're trying to get ahead of that right now. And so this whole talk is about what you need to know now to start thinking about for the next year or 2 or 3 so that you're not behind. And we want to get you ahead of this curve. So going back to the beginning of the human existence, you like that? Yeah. We began to communicate with body language, then grunts, and then eventually voice. We're the only animal that communicates with voice, and that started about 100,000 years ago. That continued through the ages. Even though we had scriptures and we had writing, it was for the educated folks. It wasn't for the commoners. So we continue to speak even in modern times, as you can see here, using voice, our language. This is how we've communicated for the last 100,000 years, until about 450,000 years ago, when the printing press was invented and we could get our message out beyond just our voice. All of a sudden, that was the mass communication of the day. Fast forward to, it's debatable when this really took off, but around when the IBM came out with their compatible, or the IBM personal computer, which I think was in the 80s. So for the last 30 years or so, we've been communicating like this. And this is how you get the message out. And then we had AOL. Who remembers AOL? Yeah. Who loved AOL? I loved it. It was awesome. Yeah, it was great. This is a screenshot from AOL from the 90s. And this was cutting edge back in the day. It was so cool. But people started to get together and communicate online with the computer using their keyboards. And then we had mobile phones. So I never had one of those on the left. Did anyone have one of those? Oh, wow. You guys are pioneers. Pioneers. Yeah, I think I had maybe one of these. But fast forward all the way to the right, and in 2007, we got iPhones, and that changed everything. And this is what we do now, right? So this is how we communicate. So it used to be with our voice for 100,000 years. For about 450 years, we would read. Then for about 30 years, we would type. And for the last 12 years, we use our thumbs, right? And this is how we communicate these days. This is modern communication. This is the timeline of the internet era, if you will, modern communications. So Internet Explorer, which was the browser of the day, it dominated for sure. It came out in 1995. And Amazon came out around the same time. I think it was actually 1994. So right around 94, 95 is when things really started to take off with the internet. And that was the big land grab for the next 10 to 12 years until the smartphone came out. Once the smartphone came out, there was a land grab for mobile. Everybody had to mobilize their business or their organization, their websites, mobile apps. Well, 12 years forward, 2019, we think that there is something new, a new land grab that's out there. And it has to do with, obviously, based on the title of the talk, voice. So how many people here speak to their phone for the purpose not of a voice communication, but of voice to text? Yeah, I do it all the time. So why do you do that? It's fast, right? Is it perfect? Absolutely not. It messes up all the time, right? But it's getting better. and you add in things like artificial intelligence, and it's going to get better and better and better to the point where it won't mess up. Now, how long is that going to take? Don't know. But technology is advancing very, very quickly. Could take a year, could take 5 years. But at some point, this is going to be the way that you talk to get text messages out going forward. If you even have a phone. There are people that think that when our kids, or maybe grandkids, get of age, they're going to look at this thing like we look at pagers these days. So we have smart speakers now. How many people here have a smart speaker of any kind? How many have more than one? Yeah, I've got, I don't know, probably 5. Yeah, so these things are great. If you don't have one, you set them up in your house or your office. You can talk to Google and it will give you a response. You can talk to Alexa, it will give you a response. It's very transactional right now as far as I want this piece of data, and it gives you the piece of data back. Here's the timeline. Apple was the pioneer in this space back in 2011, but as you can see very quickly, other companies jumped on the bandwagon, right? Google, Microsoft. Interesting thing about Microsoft is they came out with Cortana. So who here uses Windows? I don't, by the way, so I won't raise my hand. All right, Cortana is built into Windows, right? So you can speak to your Windows computer. Does anybody do that? So Siri is built into the Mac, and I'm a Mac guy. And I don't know why, I just hate it. Whenever Siri turns on the computer, it just doesn't feel right to be talking to your computer right now. It feels right to talk to your phone, but anyways, interesting little tidbit about Microsoft Cortana is Microsoft came out with their own assistant, voice assistant, Cortana, and they recently switched over to Alexa. It supports Alexa, which is an Amazon product. So Microsoft is kind of ceding this market to the leaders being Amazon and also Google. So speaking of Amazon, there was a conference that I went to in January in Chattanooga, as you can see, called AlexaConf. This is the 3rd year they've had this conference. And it was a relatively small conference, about 500 people attended, but that was triple the size of 2018, and 2018 was double the size of 2017. Gives you an idea of the interest level here, right? People are really interested in this. The people that were at this conference, they were talking about things like this being a legacy device already, right? Mobile. So they're so sure, and by the way, Amazon was a major sponsor, thus the name AlexaConf, but they're so sure that voice is the next technology that they're already referring to mobile, and certainly websites as just legacy technology. They've already written it off, basically. They know that this is coming. Now, whether that's true or not is debatable, but certainly Amazon, Google, the people that are involved in this ecosystem believe it. And this is probably why. If you look at this chart, this shows the adoption rate of consumer technologies over time, different consumer technologies, going back to the internet and the radio all the way off to the right. Just very briefly, those took 20 years to get up to about a 50% penetration with the US population. Our beloved smartphones, it took them, what, about 6, 7 years to get up to 50%. Smart speakers, totally different. Right? So a lot of people, one more time, who has a smart speaker? Okay, at least half. At least half. These things are gaining traction very, very quickly, much faster than most people realize, and this shows it. So what do you do with a smart speaker? You can certainly ask it questions, you can get some content out of it, but a lot of people, a third of people, are actually starting to use their smart speaker instead of watching TV. Right? So we know that broadcast TV is having trouble these days because of things like on-demand TV and what's called over-the-top, which is like Netflix or Hulu, right? But people are starting to walk away from TV even more because they have other options. So what do you do with your smart speaker? This chart shows that the majority of people right now are doing the basic stuff. They're playing music, they're getting basic information. Every single morning, I ask Alexa for my flash briefings, which I'll talk about in a minute, and the very first one that I have on there is the weather. I just want to know what the weather is and what the forecast is. Super handy. And I can do it while I'm making my breakfast or anything else. So this shows where people are actually using voice assistants. Surprisingly, they're using it in the car more than anywhere else. Why is that? Hands-free. Hands-free. Right. You're driving. You don't want to be distracted. My car, which is a 2016, it came with what's called Uconnect. It's a Chrysler. And so I could talk to it, and I can get basic information out of it. It can make phone calls and whatnot. After about a year, that free trial ended. It was going to cost $15, so I stopped doing it. Now I just use my phone. But the battle place for voice right now is actually in the car. It's not even so much in the home anymore because of that penetration curve that you saw. So a lot of manufacturers are trying to get in the car. The people that put on a LexiConf, they're also putting on a conference in a couple weeks called Voice in the Car. So you're going to see a lot of activity when it comes to voice assistants in the car. All right, so I mentioned flash briefings very, very quickly. Who here listens to flash briefings? Wow, okay, not that many compared to how many people have smart speakers. All right, so what a flash briefing is, it's a small audio file. It can be no more than 10 minutes long. It's only on Amazon right now. And what you can do as a user, you can go into your Alexa app and you can get these audio files that are produced on a daily basis typically, and you can listen to them one after another after another. Now, they can only be 10 minutes max, but they're typically 2, 3, 4 minutes long. And these are things like the news, right? So media outlets are starting to put this information out to the world through voice. Alan, who has been doing voice development, has been putting the information about the Virginia Beach city meetings, is that correct? Yeah, out in voice. So if you want to know what meetings are coming up, you can ask your smart speaker now. And thanks to Alan's skill, it will tell you. If you're interested in People magazine news, it'll tell you. Compared to podcasts, flash briefings are a very small number. This chart was taken, the screenshot was taken a little while ago, 8,000. It's actually at 8,700 now. So there's only 8,700 flash briefings that are out there that you can consume. Very low numbers as compared to podcasts. As you can see, 650,000. A skill, by the way, a skill is a little more of a complex interaction where you can ask your Alexa or your Google Home a question, and then it will go out and dynamically get the data. So maybe like you'll ask you for a stock quote for a particular stock. It'll go out to the internet, get the data, and then return it. There's more skills than flash briefings. Flash briefings are usually recorded, and you can get your information one flash briefing after another, after another. I subscribe to about 12 or so, which is a lot. I don't think most people do that. I do because I'm doing a lot of research. I want to hear what other people are saying. Graphically speaking, podcasts versus flash briefings, if you want to do a podcast these days, you're not going to be on the cutting edge. There's a lot of competition out there. Now, I would definitely recommend doing a podcast, but you won't be a pioneer. If you want to get ahead of everyone else, flash briefings are probably where you want to focus on. It's still a recording. It's just short in nature, which is actually a good thing because it's easier to record than a very long, hour-long podcast with an interview. So this says 8,000. The true number I'll show you in a minute is 8,700. That's the supply, right? That's how many flash briefings are out there. The demand for flash briefings is a little more difficult to figure out. We don't have specific data yet, but people are trying to figure this out. Amazon doesn't provide this data. Even though Amazon has all the data in the world, they keep a lot of it to themselves. But what we do know is that there are 100 million Alexa-enabled devices out in the wild that have been sold. And so this is your Echo. This is the Alexa app on my phone. This is my Fire Stick. All right, anyone have a Fire Stick? Fire Sticks are awesome, by the way, because you can talk to it, you can tell it what you want, and it goes and it finds it for you. Out of the 100 million Alexa devices that have been sold, approximately 30% of those Alexa users listen to flash briefings. That's a guesstimate. Yes? Yeah. All right, so the question is Bixby. Bixby is the voice assistant that's on Samsung phones. So I have a Samsung S9, and there's a power button, there's volume up, volume down, and this other button which always kind of pisses me off when I hit it, because it's Bixby. Okay. It's the same concept. It's not Amazon's voice assistant. It's not Google's voice assistant. It's Samsung's. So Samsung is making a huge push into the voice assistant world. There's the competition going on, right? So everyone is vying for the next thing. Google wants to win this. Google really wants to win at voice assistants because of things like voice search. Has anyone done a query voice search, like the one that you would normally put into Google? Well, you get one answer back. Right? So if you ask, where can I buy blue jeans? In Google on a web page, you get a list. And then it's up to you to start clicking around and figuring out what the best answer is, right? Well, with voice search, if you ask your Google Home, or if you ask your Alexa, where can I buy blue jeans, you'll get one answer. One answer, right? So this is a big threat to Google. Google wants you to ask its Google Home or its Google Home Mini, that question. They don't want you to ask Bixby, and they don't want you to ask Amazon. And by the way, that one answer, when it's going to be either overwhelmingly everyone agrees to that answer, or you've done a really good job branding. So from a marketing and branding perspective, if voice is coming out, you want to train the public and your consumers not to ask for blue jeans. You want to train them to ask for Levi's. Big difference, right? Because if they ask for blue jeans, who decides if it's Wrangler or Levi's that is the result? Well, it's not you, right? It's not you as the brand. It's someone else. It's Google or it's Amazon, probably whoever pays Amazon the most. So if you're not thinking about branding when it comes even at all, but certainly to voice, you need to, because you want people to ask for your brand, not for your category. Big difference. All right, so about 30 million flash briefing listeners. That number is going to be refined as more data comes out. I mentioned 8,700. Again, it's very hard to get this data. This chart I had to put together myself. I realized that in the Alexa app, you can get the number that it currently is, but there's nowhere that actually shows the trend over time. And I got some data points from some old articles, and I created this chart here. I've been keeping track of it for the last 6 months or so myself, so everything to the right is pretty accurate. Everything to the left from, I don't know, about here or so is like 2 data points, just from articles, where they actually cited how many there were at the time. So 100 million devices, 8,700 flash briefings. That's roughly 11,500 devices per individual flash briefing. Now, if roughly 30% of those device listeners or device owners listen to flash briefings, you're talking about a 3,000 to 1 ratio. Not bad. What this is saying is there's a lot of demand right now for flash briefings and not a lot of supply. What's also very nice about voice is that consumers are receptive to hearing from businesses. All right, so in some media, excuse me, businesses just don't have a place in like some social media, as an example. But for smart speakers, for whatever reason, they do. This is good for us. So good that we created our own flash briefing. Now, what we have on the left is the Amazon flash briefing image. This is what people see. This is me and my business partner, Kevin, back there. And so we want to get ahead of this. So we record every single day, and we usually do it in batches, but every single day an episode comes out. It's about 3 minutes long. Today's was even shorter. And it's just something that we're learning along the way as we build the company. It's something that's of interest to us. It's easy to record because we're in it day in and day out, and we're really just documenting our journey. But it's already starting to take off. We've got about 3,000 downloads in the last 30 days, and we've been out for about 45 days. So we're super happy about that. And then these ecosystems, they are discoverable. So people can put in entrepreneurialism or running a business or something that pertains to what we're doing, and more people will subscribe and download. Yeah, so all right, so to repeat the question, these smart speakers are now starting to come out with screens. The first screens were really small, and now they're bigger. Yeah, and they're getting bigger and bigger. And so the question is there a place for visual in the flash briefings and then also just in the smart speaker, smart device? And the answer is absolutely. Already, when you publish your flash briefing, you can put, well, by default, if you have the screen, it will show your image. So it'll show this image on the left. Right? It'll show the image that is like the icon, if you will, of your flash briefing. But if you also upload a video, it will play the video. We haven't got there yet. That's the next thing for us. There are a couple of influencers and marketers that do that. And so when we play the flash briefing on our Fire Stick, which is connected to the TV, then we'll see those videos. There are some media outlets, like I think it's Fox News and maybe even CNN, where you actually see the person recording, like speaking it, right, in the studio, which is,
that's kind of boring.
Yeah, it's kind of boring.
But having the video and up to 10 minutes is pretty
Up to 10 minutes, yeah.
You do a lot in 10 minutes.
Yeah, I think, so it is boring just to see someone speaking into a microphone, but you're going to see that replaced with more interesting things going forward, right? We're very early into this. All right, this is our downloads. I don't know exactly why we had that spike, but it's been pretty steady, and this is based on the normal promotion that we do for really anything that we put out in the world as a marketing agency. So we didn't do anything extra. We didn't pay for any sponsorship or anything like that. This is just telling people that we know and our network that, hey, we have this flash briefing, and all of a sudden we're getting 150, roughly 200 at the 150 at the high end is what it looks like, downloads a day. That's 150 people listening to us. I'll take it. And the feedback's been great. So this is a quote that I got from someone on LinkedIn very recently. But I've also had this experience, and so has Kevin and so have the other folks in our company, where we will meet with someone. I actually met with a potential salesperson about 2 days ago, and I was explaining how we're growing and how we're expanding to Orlando, we're doing these things. And she said, oh, I know. I listened to your flash briefing. Yeah, and so I didn't have to, I was introducing all those concepts, but she already knew everything I was about to say, which is great. That's the position you want to be in. When you talk to someone, especially a prospect, and you're selling, regardless of what you're selling, you want the person to be familiar with you. So I've been talking a lot about Amazon and flash briefings. I definitely think you should get into flash briefings. At least start listening. Think about making your own. But as you can see here, flash briefings they're peanuts. It's peanuts compared to the Google Assistant. And the reason is Google's everywhere, right? I can get to Google, similar to Bixby on a Samsung, I can get to Bixby by pressing this button, but I can get to Google, let's see if it works, by saying, okay, Google. Okay, it just vibrated. So the Google Assistant's built into the operating system of the most prolific mobile device there is these days. So Android surpassed Apple as far as number of units sold years ago, and by a long shot too. So yeah, Alexa and the Echo and Amazon are fantastic and exciting, but there's a bigger market out there. And we talked about the car. There's a bigger market out there. There's a lot that companies are going after right now. All right, sonic branding. Who's familiar with the concept of sonic branding? You probably are. Yeah, I think everyone's going to be familiar with it. I couldn't get my Echo actually to connect, so I'm going to play it from here. I've got a couple of examples, and let's hope this works. It should. All right. So first, this is an example of sonic branding, and in particular, a sonic logo. No. Could you all hear that? I don't think this did much. All right, so I'm sure everyone's heard that before, right? That's been around for a long time. This is MasterCard. Has anyone heard the MasterCard Sonic logo? So this just came out a couple of weeks ago, and it was a big deal in the marketing industry. That sound at the end, you're going to start hearing that everywhere. If you use MasterCard, when you process a transaction, you're going to hear that over and over and over and over. And what they're trying to do is just drill it into your head. When you hear that sound, that means MasterCard. Right? So knowing that this is a trend, we wanted to jump on it early in our company. So I'm going to play you the beginning of a video. We also use the audio for our flash briefings. But this is a video that we created a couple days ago. All right, so that first part, you didn't know what it was, right? That's our logo, yes.
Now, is that being done just for identification in terms of a particular company's brand? What is the significance of it in terms of, other than to identify?
It's the exact same thing as a visual logo. Recognition, right. When you hear Intel's audio logo, Sonic logo, ding, 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 ding. Yeah, if I didn't show that to you, you would have guessed what it was, right? Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So it's a logo for the ears. Yeah. So we were using what you just saw where the Array Digital expands. We've been using that for about a year and a half, 2 years now. And we realized that sonic branding was becoming hot really quick. A couple of big agencies were jumping on it. MasterCard jumped on it all at once. And so we got in the conference room and we said, hey, we need a sonic logo. What are we going to do? What do we sound like? And it was actually Kevin who said, hey, we've got this, we call it a bumper video that goes in the front and back of our normal videos. And we had the clicking. Let's use that. We've been using it for 2 years. Absolutely. So we took that, we extracted the audio, we compressed some of the delay between the clicking and the zoom, zoom, zip, zip, and that became our audio brand, our audio logo. So my point is, we didn't have to do a lot of work. We already were doing it. We just had to recognize that that was the audio version of our logo, something we were already doing. Well, we bought that sound. We bought the sounds off of a website. Who asked the question? Okay, yeah. So do we have to copyright that? Yeah. We have the license to use those sounds. Yeah. You don't want to be like going and just copying and downloading off the internet, and then because especially if it's your logo stuff. Yes.
How do you come up with the sounds? I know you put on down. If you want to come up with something original for your own company.
Yeah. It's so how do you come up with a sonic logo? It's a great question. It's really, the real question is how do you come up with a logo? Right? So, and then you just need to think about in audio terms. What is it you represent? Are you doing transactions? There's someone who, Gary Vaynerchuk, anybody familiar with him? So he has one where it sounds to me almost like a check mark. Like you know, something like it, when I hear it, I think of a check mark, like just getting it done, you know? And so he's very much about urgency and just moving forward. So, another question? Someone else? Okay. At AlexaConf, I was introduced to a couple of companies that are trying to do things that are pushing the envelope even further with voice. This is an example of one company called Private Key. And they are trying to create secure transactions through voice. By secure, I mean, Alexa, pay my mortgage. Right? So imagine everything that goes into that transaction. Right. So you have to have authorization with your bank. You have to have authorization with your mortgage company. There's a local company who was here at the conference, a local insurance broker who's very interested in this. He wants people to be able to get insurance through voice, trying to figure out how to do it. And so this is coming. And it's not enough just to say, pay my mortgage. It has to recognize who you are. It has to authenticate who you are. It can't be a recording of me saying that before or words from several different recordings stitched together. Here's another one. This is pretty cool. This is surveys by voice. So I'm sure everybody here gets surveys by email, right? And you don't even want to fill it out. It's a pain. Well, this company, they actually do surveys by voice. So I can't actually demonstrate it because I don't have my Echo set up on this Wi-Fi. But if you were to say, Alexa, open survey line, and then give it the keyword, and the keyword that I created was economic development, it'll ask you some questions. And these are all questions that I put in. So I went to a web page, I typed in the questions, and now Alexa is reading it out. Just kind of an interesting, novel way of getting the data. All right, so takeaways. Some things I want you to think about when you leave here. Voice is the fastest growing consumer technology that we know of compared to newspapers, TV, internet, and our beloved smartphones. There's something going on here. Now that you know this, you have an early mover advantage. You can do something about it. I'm not saying you have to go all in on voice and scrap everything else, but you can start thinking about voice and how to bring voice into your marketing. So yeah, think about what you can do in your business. The best way to get started is think about a use case. What's that one transaction that you could support through voice? Flash briefings. So definitely if you are an Alexa owner, start listening to flash briefings. Go into your Alexa app. If you're not sure how to do it, come up afterwards, I'll show you. And subscribe to flash briefings because it's just free information and it's super convenient. And as a business, I would really consider starting a flash briefing. Get in on that supply demand, right? Way more demand than there is supply. This is arbitrage. You can get in on that. And then sonic branding. What do you sound like? Right, start thinking about that. Look at some of the videos, some of the assets that you already have. See if you can extract something out. If you can take something that you already have and reuse it for audio, fantastic. That's all I have. Any questions?